Hello, guys. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Sue, for the introduction and for managing the slides. So my name is Jose Anza Garcia, and I'm a GIS specialist at University of Maryland Libraries. And my supervisor is Milan Budhathoki. Unfortunately, he had a scheduling conflict and couldn't be here, but he sends you all his regards. But with all that said, we can go ahead and get started. So next slide, please. So a little bit of introduction. Again, we're affiliated with the University of Maryland, and this project is really centered around our map library, but a little bit more data about the library in general. So McKeldin Library is a flagship library of the University of Maryland system, and it is located on the main campus, which is in College Park, Maryland. And so the map library in question, the library has multiple different collections, books. It has I think an East Asia collection, government documents. But, the map library is kind of one of the coolest ones, in my opinion. It has 200,000 plus individual items. So that includes paper maps, bound atlases, and a bunch of other really cool stuff like relief models and stuff. And in addition, we are the regional Federal Depository Library for both the states of Maryland and Delaware. And basically what that means is we're really close to to DC, but basically we get a bunch of government related documents from the federal government just to store. And basically because of that, we have to be open to all citizens and public, to anybody and just the public in case they want to come and take a look at these government related documents. So within this includes 27,000 serial maps, which are very historically significant. And, they're definitely important for historical research and researchers. So that's a little bit of background about the library. And it's also important to mention that it is managed by the GIS and Data Services team at the library, of which I am part of. So therefore, so this map library is kind of under our jurisdiction. Next slide, please. So what is the issue at hand that we are trying to solve with this project? Well, just from managing the map library, we can notice that the map library is definitely underutilized, especially compared with, the geographic and digital GIS data that our team provides to patrons. But we notice that there's less interest in the paper maps. But we think a lot of this is because of a lack of public or community awareness about it. So people will just walk by, see a bunch of these kind of cabinets where all the maps are in, and they might just be like, oh, and, just keep on walking, or, they might just not know what stuff the map library has. So there's kind of just this kind of general lack of awareness. People kind of discover it by accident, but we think there's a lot of really cool materials that could be really relevant for research and stuff. So we really wanted to have kind of an application that would impulse and promote our collection. Another issue at hand is that we have no central comprehensive catalog of all our map library materials. So all the maps, relief models, all that stuff, we don't have a central catalog of it. We have some select inventories that we've kind of accumulated and cataloged over the years, but some of them are kind of outdated. They're parts of the collection, not the entire one, and they're not connected to the main, collection database, ran by the library's IT team. So we kind of want to come up with a way where people can still search for materials within the map collection, get an idea, kind of a little bit more detailed idea of what is available in there, and kind of just maybe foster some sense of curiosity. So they're going to want to come and visit. We do have other, the library currently published a PDF map of the collection, just top down, but it's very basic. It's static. You can't really get an idea of exactly what's there. We also have an older kind of story map where we kind of try to do it in a 2D fashion, but it really only touches on general map categories. So with this project, we're really trying to dig a little bit deeper and get a little bit more detail out there so people can explore a bit more. Next slide, please. So what is our proposed solution to this problem? So we want to build a 3D GIS web application of the map collection and the surrounding environment. Our team already has experience with indoor GIS and 3D GIS because we use ArcGIS indoors a lot within our library and within other buildings on campus. So we kind of just had that on our mind and we decided to kind of just apply it to this. And we also saw some other cool projects that other teams have made. For example, ASU had a really cool project where they kind of had some 3D map cabinets. So we kind of got that idea and we were like, okay, what if we just build a entire 3D model of the entire map library and kind of the surrounding environment and kind of use that to explore. So basically, we kind of came up with a workflow. First, we were going to obtain measurements. So basically just measure everything in the map library so we could get everything down to scale and build it in ArcGIS Pro. Then build the model, obviously. And then part three, develop the web application. And you can see at right some of the technologies we're going to be using. So ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, JavaScript, HTML, and some JavaScript mapping libraries. But really our main goal here was to leverage 3D GIS capacities of ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online, which are very, very powerful. And we wanted to really come up with the custom search functionality based on the geographic range of individual drawers. So obviously the map collection has a lot of cabinets and each has individual drawers. So instead of having it connected to the main, library database, we wanted to kind of get an idea of what all the geographic locations that were represented in each drawer were. So that could be, if it's within the US, down to individual US states. So maybe this drawer has, content from like maybe Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, California. So then we would list that out in an attribute and we could do searches based on that. Kind of hope that makes sense. But basically we're searching based on the whatever's inside each drawer instead of just using the main library database to get around that because our map library is uncatalogued. So I hope that kind of makes sense. But anyways, next slide, please. Okay, so for the first step of our project, what we wanted to do is obtain the measurements, but I think it's also useful to kind of go over a little bit more about the study area and the map library in general and what it looks like. So it's located on the 4th floor of McKeldin Library's West Wing. So basically we have 7 floors and each floor is divided into like a kind of like an East Wing and a West Wing. So just in that West Wing, it approximately uses up like a third of the floor space. And there's really 2 different types of map storage kind of furniture. The first one are kind of the drawer-based map cabinets. And on that bottom image, you can see it all the way at the left. It's just a bunch of drawers. They're kind of modular. They're in groups of 5, and those groups of 5 are just stacked on top of each other. So it can be anywhere from like, 2 of them on top. So 10 drawers in total to like maybe 5, and it'll be 25 drawers. So just kind of combinations of that. And there's 41 of those kind of modular drawer-based map cabinets. There's also the top opened ones, which are kind of in that bottom image. You can see them in the middle. They just kind of open up like this, and they just have one big container. And there's 6 of those, and it holds like 4,000 maps. It's a lot. And then the second really big type of map storage furniture we have are Atlas bookcases, which are like that bottom image there on the right. It's just like a bookcase with like little nooks or cubbies. We call them drawers for simplicity in this project, but yeah, they're just kind of like, you just stick some atlases in there and they're kind of just a separate little storage area. And we kind of treated them the same as drawers. So just to make sense. So how do we collect all those measurements? Well, there's these really cool laser measuring tools made by this German company called Leica. And basically it's just ultra accurate measurement with a laser. So we basically just went through the entire map library and measured not only the dimensions of each individual of the different cabinet models. So we didn't measure each individual little of the 41, for example, drawer-based cabinets. We measured just one, and just so we could have like a general model that we could kind of copy and paste. So we measured those, and we also measured distances between each of the cabinets, between the rows, between other features like columns and walls, just so we could have a very accurate and to-scale model. So yeah, that was pretty much the first part of the gathering data. But we also, before I forget, we also did gather like the attributes. Okay, so in each drawer, what are the geographic locations represented here? So we could have that later, and so we can include that later in the data. So yeah, next slide, please. So then building the 3D model in ArcGIS. So we went to our facilities management division and we asked them if they had perhaps, by chance, some detailed, geographic data, because we do a lot of indoors projects, but nothing was to this degree of detail that we were looking for. So we decided to build it kind of from scratch. We used a 3D local scene in ArcGIS Pro, which is well suited for this really like kind of small scale application. You can have the global scene as well, which is kind of more for like countries and bigger 3D viz, but the local scene was just right for what we wanted. And how do you make the 3D features in ArcGIS? Well, you can make them just like any other feature in 2D with the editing toolbox. And in our case, we use the exact measurements we took based on the last phase. So kind of the way it works, you can see that image on the right at the bottom. Those are the exact same feature, but it's basically one of them has been rendered in 3D, and the other one is just all those kind of 10, 12 layers just sandwiched together on top of each other with the same height. So basically, to make it 3D, what we did is you set the base height and the top height to attributes in the attribute table. So all those measurements we got in the previous phase, we put them as different columns in the attribute table, and then we set all those as the base height and the top height. So basically just places everything exactly where it needs to go. And voila, you have a 3D cabinet. And you can really do this with any feature. We also did it for like the walls, other bookcases, columns, everything. So it was once we got into that rhythm, it was very easy to kind of replicate that for everything. And the specific tool is called extrusion. It's available, in the editing toolbox, I believe. Once you have a 3D scene, 3D local scene, you can go in there and just select an extrusion and select, from a specific, you can generate an extrusion from a specific height. And that's basically how these 3D features were created. And then obviously we're not going to create each cabinet individually one by one. We use copy and paste, rotating, editing, all those tools to kind of just arrange everything, put everything right where it needs to go. Sometimes we went back and measured again just to make sure the scales were just right. And eventually we had our entire model. And then from there, what we did was because if you export it so ArcGIS Online is basically, for like cloud hosting your ArcGIS data. And basically, if you just export it normally, it flattens everything. So we converted it to a multi-patch feature layer, and that basically maintains all of the 3D geometry, and it makes it inherent to the feature. So it's always going to be a 3D feature. So we made that conversion, and then we uploaded it to ArcGIS Online. Next slide, please. So just some more images of like kind of the final results for like specific features. So for example, at left there, we have some of the drawer-based cabinets. And then that's kind of the final result. As you can see, they're not like ultra super detailed, but what we really were looking for is we were looking for something that was a, good generic representation of real life that people could use to people could still get an idea of where they were and everything kind of matched. But, we wanted to spend more time on like functionality, performance, and, ease of use than necessarily just like very, very like extreme detail. But, obviously, and then at left, we have the same thing, the Atlas bookcases. And at the right there, we have our representation of them. And yeah, you can see those colors on top of the cabinets. And those are actually color-based legend for map categories. So for example, the orange would be atlases and atlas cases, and the purple in this case would be, I think, country maps or something else. But yeah, you'll see that those colors are just a color-based legend for map categories. Next slide, please. So yeah, the phase 3, fun part, building the web app. So obviously I talked a little bit about ArcGIS Online previously. It was kind of our cloud hosting solution, and you can have all your GIS data there from ArcGIS Pro. We had it as a web scene, and then basically what we could do is we could use the seamless integration that it has with ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript mapping library. I used HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which are like the basic languages of the internet, just to build a web application using that web library. It embeds the fully working, fully interactive model directly in your website, and then you can just build functionality using their custom classes and libraries from there. So one of the important kind of features I used was a query function. So again, we had all of those, the list of all the geographic locations for each drawer in the attribute table. So now what we were going to do is use a query function to do SQL-based querying of the attribute table. So basically, people can put in keywords, and based off that keyword, it will run a query on the entire attribute table, and it will return results. That's kind of how we're doing this entire thing behind the scenes. And there's also some really cool other functions that I'll show a little bit in our demo coming up. Just a highlight function, a zoom function, and those really expand functionality, make it easier to use. You don't have to just drag and search around. It automatically zooms in for you. And the highlight also just, you can see exactly where your results are. So next slide, please. And yeah, I have a demo. This is kind of like just a little GIF of just how it works. So as you can see, you have a selection. And so I'll just go ahead and start the demo. So I hope you guys can all see that. Let me just close meeting controls. So this is the web application. And basically, you enter it, and you can have here. And then basically you can search by either map category. So for example, let's say I want to see those cool congressional serials, those historical maps. I can search, and as you can see, they're all highlighted. Those are all the drawers in interest. And then we also have some quick little result cards here. So once you click on those, it'll zoom in exactly to the drawer of interest. And Some of them have links to external sheets we have. So from a kind of like little inventories we have, but I'll show you, I'll demonstrate one with those. That one doesn't have one in particular. For example, I can do, maybe I want to see stuff from Maryland. And yeah, it'll just show. So for example, I can click on this result card. These are all the results for Maryland, by the way. And so for example, it has a link. And we have a spreadsheet here, which with all of the individual maps in every drawer. So this is kind of the way we got around not having a central catalog. We kind of just came up with our own solution so people can explore. And when I like for example, even like a small country, for example, in West Africa, there's a country of Togo. I like this as an example because it has one drawer as a result, and it immediately zooms you in, and you can see there. So if you're interested in maps of Togo, you know exactly where to go when you explore the collection. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for the demonstration. Let me just stop the share real quick. Thank you, Sue. So yeah, let's just conclude a little bit. So I think we were successful in building and developing an app that allows patrons to explore, kind of the materials and get kind of a greater idea of like what's there, what's available, what can we, if I go to the map library, what can I expect to see? Maybe you're looking for something in particular, you're a researcher, you want to see, okay, I want, for example, the map of Togo. And so once you come to the map library, there's going to be maps of Togo because you saw that, you can see that, and you know it down to the drawer where exactly where you have to go. Map library can be big and confusing. Sometimes we don't have our map volunteer there. So perhaps people may not be able to find what they're looking for, but with the web app, our goal is to, increase, like make it easier for people to explore and promote, and easier for us to promote the existence of the map library, and easier for people to explore without, just through their phones or through their computer. So obviously it has promotional value for the map library. This is something that's maybe not, we now have a tool to advertise it and to the general public, all the cool government documents and maps. And then our custom search system was really, we think that this came out really well because it really overcame that lack of a catalog. And if there's any other, map libraries out there who may be interested in something like this, just know that, not having a central map catalog that's like connected to your, necessarily your central library database or, that shouldn't be an issue. You can find ways to overcome these issues and still make an app that allows people to explore. And that was kind of our goal. And we think it was a good solution for the issue at hand. And kind of another very important thing is we think it's a pretty replicable and adaptable workflow. We'd love to see other map libraries implement this if they're having the same potential promotion issues or the cataloging issues. We think that this is kind of easy to do. The only things we needed were really the laser measure and access to ArcGIS Online, access to ArcGIS Pro, and a little bit of web development knowledge. And we were able to create this tool. So we think it's definitely replicable for anybody out there who would be interested in using it. So with that, I want to conclude my presentation. I just want to give quick thanks to Jim Nealis, who is our map library volunteer, and he was instrumental in helping us create this application, and also the rest of my team, Shujian, Anna, Alice, Stella, who helped out with creating this web application and project. So thank you very much, guys, for your attention and for your time.